Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. What's up? It's Dr. Olivia, the social media PhD. I got my PhD in mass communications from Penn State in 2023, and I study the psychology of influencers. I study that relationship between influencers and their followers. On this channel, I use my academic knowledge to comment on influencer crises and drama. Last week, I talked about why Vanilla Mace is receiving more backlash than Cutie Cinderella, so go ahead, check that out. But today, we are more so going to talk about why people are not buying Ned Fulmer and Colleen Ballinger's recent addressing the backlash. I'd like to talk you through the psychology behind how people forgive someone after a transgression has been committed in the relationship. And interestingly, public relations research actually adopts the same exact model when organizations get into crises. So jumping right in, the major theory we're going to be talking about today is attribution theory. This theory says that when someone does a behavior, we are trying to figure out what is the cause of that behavior. Is it internal or is it due to external circumstances? In other words, is that person low in attribution, it wasn't really their fault, or on the other hand, was it entirely their fault, something entirely in their control? Even though it is a spectrum, researchers do typically break it up into three different types of transgressions. So there's the completely low in attribution, not someone's fault, high in attribution, completely their fault, and then in the middle we've got this accidental crisis or transgression. Let's put an example on this. Let's say your friend is supposed to take you to the airport and they don't show up. You're having a conversation later and trying to figure out, hey, what happened? Now, if your friend was completely low in attribution, maybe they didn't pick you up because their apartment caught on fire, the fire department came, the paramedics rushed them to the hospital, and in all of that hubbubaloo, they could not contact you and let you know ahead of time. In that case, you're probably going, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I hope you're doing okay, right? It's not your friend's fault for the behavior that ended up happening, which is you didn't get taken to the airport. On the complete other end of things, if it's completely high in attribution, then this would be a case scenario where your friend sees what time it is, knows they're supposed to leave to take you to the airport, decides that they just don't feel like it today, they don't want to get off their butt, they want to continue sitting on the couch eating bonbons, and they just need a self-care day, right? That is something completely in your friend's control. You're probably going to be the most angry at this one. This type of crisis or transgression, we call it preventable because it is. Now, in the middle, accidental, again, it's really fuzzy on what this might look like, but let's say your friend works night shift, they had to take you to the airport at noon, they always wake up on their own by noon, they set their alarm didn't go off, and they overslept. In that case, you're like, okay, this is still your fault, right? Like, you should have set an extra alarm, I was counting on you, but also under the circumstances, it's not like you chose to blow me off. So in that case, they're kind of in the middle for that attribution. They are responsible for their behavior, but it's not as bad as them sitting on their butt and choosing not to come get you. So why does this attribution matter? Because the response that we expect from them when they are trying to repair the relationship depends on what level of attribution the transgression was at. When we're at that low end of the attribution, a response like a denial is appropriate, at least according to the research. This would say your friend might, they still might say the word sorry, but they would go, sorry, like, the apartment caught on fire, like, I had no control over the situation. We know in this case your friend did not have control over the situation. We typically, in this scenario, are not expecting someone to be like, it'll never happen again, I'm so sorry, I know I hurt you. It wasn't their fault. Now, once we get into that accidental range, so like that medium level of attribution, research says a diminished response is appropriate here. A diminished response is where someone takes some responsibility, but they also either slightly blame another party or they totally contextualize it to relieve some of the blame. Example, I'm so sorry I didn't take you to the airport. I overslept. That's my bad. My phone has never done that before. I worked night shift last night, right? So they're like, they're taking some responsibility, but they're also like, it was the phone, my alarm didn't go off, etc. And once we get to the preventable crisis or preventable transgression, where it was completely in the person's control, we expect a rebuild response. There's multiple components to a rebuild response, and once I tell you these things, I would love for you to go back and look at influencer apologies and tell me if you notice these bullet points being hit. The first thing we want to see is them taking responsibility for their actions. Not blaming it on the iPhone not going off, not blaming it on the apartment complex. Immediately what comes to mind, there's this deleted scene from The Office. Ryan is, I think, telling Andy, like, instead of apologizing, he's like, yeah, I hate that guy that did this. And Andy's like, it was you. And he's like, that was Ryan 2.0. I'm now Ryan 3.0. Yeah, I really hate that guy too, right? Like, he's not taking any accountability or responsibility. So that's the first thing we want to see, is someone actually saying, this was my fault. Next, we want to see an empathy component. We want them to understand, or at least tell us that they understand, that they harmed us and hurt us in this process. The next thing we want to see is an apology. We want to hear the words, I am sorry. It doesn't have to necessarily be I am sorry, but whatever variation of words indicates I am remorseful and I'm going to ask for your forgiveness. Next, if appropriate, we want to know how they are going to remedy the situation. For example, if the preventable crisis was someone stole 20 bucks from your purse, we want them to tell us, okay, how are you gonna get me that 20 bucks back? You're gonna pay it back, right? You can see how here this makes more sense in like an organizational context. You get a product, it's completely damaged. They say, hey, we're gonna make this right, we're gonna send you a new one. So some sort of remedying the situation or repaying back if the situation calls for it. The last thing we want to see is, how is this not going to happen again in the future? And this kind of goes hand in hand with the other things, right? If you're acknowledging it was your fault, you recognize how it harmed me, you are apologetic about it, tell me how this is not going to happen again. And that's what helps show people that, okay, they seem to be truly sorry about this. They want to win my favor back. They want to repair the relationship. They are truly seeking forgiveness. Now, it is hard if it's a preventable circumstance or crisis. Someone doing these 5 things is not necessarily going to fix or remedy the situation, especially depending on how severe the transgression was, right? If Ned Fulmer cheated on his wife Ariel and he did those 5 steps, which I don't think he has, in an apology to his wife, that's not going to fix you cheating in a marriage, right? So it is context dependent. It is the hardest to win favor back after committing a preventable crisis or transgression, but those are the steps that you should take to start. And these different components have been shown to lead to feeling empathy. So the victim of the transgression, they feel empathy. They're like, okay, I'm starting to trust you again, right? And it leads to increased trust. Not saying that trust is not harmed during this, but a way to win back trust is to meet these 5 components. So let's assess what kind of crisis or transgression Ned Fulmer and Colleen Ballinger got themselves into. So Ned Fulmer, he cheats on his wife Ariel with an employee of the company. He then leaves the internet for a while, comes back with, hey, I'm launching a new brand, the Rock Bottom podcast, and his first interviewee is Ariel, his soon-to-be ex-wife. So what's this crisis that occurred? Ned cheated on his wife with an employee. Do we think that is low in attribution or high in attribution? How much control did he have over this? If you said high in attribution preventable, you are completely right. Now, I'd love to make a whole nother video about parasocial breakup and how we assess transgressions by influencers and by celebrities. Our response might vary based off of whether it was a moral transgression or a different type of transgression. And I firmly believe with Ned and Colleen, we can see these as moral transgressions. So again, that's a topic for another day, talking about parasocial relationships, parasocial breakup. Okay, let's just stick to, this is a preventable crisis. So if Ned wanted to gain back the favor of his audience, right, we feel offended by this, what should he have done? He should have not, well, I think honestly we wanted to see a true rebuild response to Ariel, the person that he harmed, right? So that would include taking full responsibility, showing empathy and understanding that he hurt her, steps he's going to take to remedy the situation, an apology, saying sorry, asking for forgiveness, and then also saying how this is not going to happen in the future. Instead, what Ned does on this podcast is he comes out blaming society for how society is treating Ariel. It's like halfway through the podcast before he says sorry to her one time. Yes, he talks about going to therapy, which maybe you could see as like him saying, this is what I'm doing to make sure this doesn't happen again or in future relationships, but we're kind of missing a couple of components here. He's not taking responsibility. He's not showing empathy for how he hurt her. He's saying society did it. That's a diminished response or a denial response. Not appropriate for this situation, Ned. And the actual apology, the words, I'm sorry, did not sound sincere. I think she even had to prompt him to say that. Now, according to some of the crisis communication literature, when these responses are mismatched, we actually feel anger and it harms the reputation of the person who committed the crisis. Our empathy towards them tends to be lower as well. Some research says that our Schadenfreude actually goes up. Schadenfreude is a German emotion that says pleasure at another's misfortunes. Let me know if you're feeling this with Ned Fulmer. Are you relishing in the fact that his channels are failing? If so, you're experiencing Schadenfreude. Additionally, loyalty is also lowered. So Ned is really just shooting himself in the foot by trying to blame everybody else but himself. Again, I think my next video will be more on parasocial breakup, why the moral component of this matters, why our parasocial relationships were so harmed. But for now, again, let's just focus on this idea of crisis type and response type, and if these influencers are matching those two. So now let's go over to Colleen Ballinger, who was recently on the Raven, Simone, and Maranda, I don't know her last name, maybe Simone, I'm not sure, Tea Time podcast. I did watch Adam McIntyre's, he watched the entire thing and he responded to it. And honestly with Colleen, we're seeing a lot of the same things. She's not taking responsibility for a lot of these actions. She's honestly still denying a lot of them. She denies any allegations of grooming. She has a diminished response when Raven or Maranda, they ask Colleen about Colleen sending Adam McIntyre the lingerie set, the underwear set. And Colleen does a classic diminished response here. Well, Adam kept asking for it. He kept bringing it up. A child, by the way. She was in her 30s, I believe. So this child, this underage minor, he kept asking me. So that's why I sent it. That's why I did that behavior. It was all him. No wonder Adam was losing his mind when he was watching this response, because she's completely shifting the blame from something that she completely totally did. Sorry, I had a light on back there. I thought it'd be super aesthetic, and really it is just being bright. I'm gonna turn that off. She does take responsibility and say she was texting minors. She knew they were minors. But again, she shifts the blame to a diminished response and says, well, they were the ones prompting these inappropriate conversations. So again, she's not taking ownership over the fact that she was 30 texting minors, or that according to Adam and the text messages we've seen, oftentimes she was telling them things unprompted, right? She conveniently leaves all that out and is saying they are the ones that were doing this. So again, that does not count as her taking responsibility. And again, the reason this is preventable or totally her fault is, one, she didn't have to text them. She didn't have to be in these group chats. She was the one setting the conversation. She was the one responding to things, right? So this was completely preventable. This wasn't she was somehow added to a chat on Twitter that she wasn't aware of, and the group members were talking about inappropriate things with each other, and she had no idea this was going on, right? She was fully a part of these conversations. So already we see she is not taking full responsibility like she should be with this high-end attribution or preventable crisis. Next, empathy, showing that she harmed other people or understanding that she did. I believe at one point she did say, oh, I feel so bad if I hurt others, if others you know, felt a certain way about it. I'm thinking specifically when she was talking about Becky being pulled up on stage for the yoga challenge, which again was conveniently left out, that Colleen would often pick members of the audience based off of if they were wearing skimpy clothing. Completely leaves that out, right? Tries to claim this is an innocent joke, denies that she even sees how this could be taken inappropriately, despite most of her jokes being completely inappropriate, and gives kind of this half-hearted sorry if she felt a certain way about it. Adam brings up a great point that if she was truly sorry or felt empathy, she probably would have reached out to these people that she hurt. And does it really sound like an apology? I'm sorry if you felt that way. So next we get to the what are you gonna do to remedy the situation that you were in? I don't think she said. I don't know if she has ever said, and like, don't quote me on this, but I'm not aware of Colleen saying that she has left all group chats, that she does not one-on-one message fans anymore, that she keeps things to the public comments. You would expect this as an appropriate, hey, I took this seriously, here is what I'm doing from now on. Even, I don't know, saying, she was talking about how JoJo Siwa like looks up to her as a mentor, maybe even saying, hey, to JoJo, to the other younger influencers that I work with, I have made sure to tell them my story so they can understand not to do these things, so they don't make these same mistakes and harm people in the same way. The idea of like a reparations component as well, yeah, I don't think she has said a flat out apology to Adam, to Becky, to Oliver, to everyone else in their different group chats. And yeah, I feel like even that could give them just like, hey, a boost in credibility. Seems to not be any of that. I don't know what else would be appropriate for the situation. I don't know if it is overstepping to be like, I'll pay for therapy or like something like that. And I don't know if these people even want to be in contact with Colleen again. I imagine they do not. But you get what I'm saying. We're just kind of brainstorming how Colleen should have approached this response if she was truly sorry. But again, the fact that she was sticking to that diminish and that denial makes me think she does not want to acknowledge that she was fully responsible for her own downfall. She's still seeing this as, I got caught up in this, I was the one that was canceled, instead of, I did a bunch of behaviors that were incredibly inappropriate, and I am now reaping the consequences of my actions. All right, we are going to end it there, but I'd love to hear your thoughts now that I'm telling you, you know, kind of these components of an apology: diminish, denial. Is this something you see a lot with influencer responses to crises that they're in? And what do you think about Colleen and Ned? Do you agree that they seem to be diminishing and denying versus taking that full responsibility? Have you ever seen an influencer do like those 5 steps to actually rebuild and repair a relationship? I would love to hear about that down in the comments below. Next week I'll be talking about parasocial relationships and parasocial breakups that we have with celebrities, with influencers. So make sure you give us a like and subscribe if you want to see more of that. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. Bye!